I speak to students. When I start showing them the cool projects that we get to work on, their eyes just light up. Oh, wow, like SpaceX, like rockets. Like I would bring in parts for them to show them the difference between a 3D printed part versus a machine component, right? Different ways of manufacturing because you never know
Mhm.
what's going to excite them. We don't know,
Right.
is it 3D printing that they like, or is it going to be machining?
Christine, welcome to the Manufacturing Report podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on.
I love your background. I love what you're doing, and I can't wait to get into this. Before we talk about the podcast you have and the business you're involved with and a lot of the other activities that you do to support manufacturing, can you tell us kind of like where you're from and I guess a bit about your life before you got back into manufacturing as well? Because I think that's really fascinating.
I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. And, after graduating, getting my marketing degree from San Jose State, I wanted something different and new outside of tech. So I moved down to LA and luck be it, I became a red carpet reporter. And
Wow.
I know. It really just into my lap, and I tell people this story because growing up, instead of reading the Bible at home, my mom had us read the National Enquirer and Star magazine. So we were always obsessed with celebrities. So, I guess it kind of like naturally evolved that I ended up in Hollywood, and then I started interviewing celebrities, and it was fabulous. It was so much fun. I lived down in LA for 12 years. I was in Hollywood for about 8 of those years. And over time, the glitz and the glamour kind of wasn't as fun and fulfilling to me anymore. And, life hit me and I ended up coming back to Silicon Valley. And at first, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was somewhat lost. I'm like, I don't know what I would do next in life. And my father and my brother, they were running a machine shop. My dad, here's another very cool story about my background and my family. So my dad, for almost 20 years, he was offshoring. So he was
Mhm.
working for tech companies in Silicon Valley, and he was running their operations, so building factories in China, in Malaysia, in Singapore. So, throughout my high school and college time, like, he was always gone traveling. He had opened up a machine shop, and so he's like, "Why don't you come out and help me and your brother? Like, we need some help out there." So I just started shadowing them for, like, the first year and a half to 2 years, and then, like, everything kinda hit me where I'm like, "Okay, this all makes sense." And mind you, I also have my MBA, so, like, business is something
Yeah.
that I love to explore and work in. And then, I fell in love with manufacturing. And my passion and mission now is to help bring manufacturing back to America because we need it. And I know my story is even more unique being Asian American, um, and how, I am all for making things in America.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was born here and I love this country and we want to give back to this country and provide
Yeah.
jobs and do all of that.
Yeah. Well, and Christine, it's like it's easy to forget that at one time in Silicon Valley, there were also a lot of manufacturing jobs too, back in the day. And so there's a big manufacturing tradition there.
There is, and I actually just moderated a panel last week on reshoring in Silicon Valley, and it was
Sure.
at a large contract manufacturer, and we had a woman from the Reshoring Institute there as well,
Mhm.
and Silicon Valley is the hub for innovation and technology, and we forget about manufacturing here. Actually, California is a huge manufacturing state.
Mhm.
We have a lot of jobs within manufacturing, and, you know, I want to rally up, other companies and other manufacturers to, you know, how do we become the hub of innovation within manufacturing starting in Silicon Valley? We
Mm.
have the VCs here, we have startups here, and we have the talent here. It's just very creative and innovative here in Silicon Valley. It's a very unique place. And on the panel, that's what they all agreed upon. Like, let's at least first get manufacturing started here in Silicon Valley, because this is how we build things and make things with the technology that we have. And
Yeah.
over time, yes, for cost savings, it might end up in another state, right? Or somewhere that's a little uh, less expensive to make things. But yeah, I mean, why can't we be both? Why can't we bring
Right.
manufacturing back to Silicon Valley and have automation and robotics kind of start here as well?
Yep, that makes sense to me. So, Christine, I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about the company now, Silicon Valley Elite Manufacturing, what you're making now, what your markets are, and all of that.
Since we are very close to other startups, we support medical, we support
Mhm.
aerospace as well, we support semiconductor. What makes us different is being very fast, right? We're very quick with prototyping. Sometimes we can make parts the next day if customers really need it. So that's what makes us kind of stand apart.
Yeah. Yeah, which is fantastic. One of the things and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because, this is not only like your vocation, you've obviously made a really interesting career shift, far more interesting than 99% of the people in the United States of America, but a valuable one. But you're also doing other things to kind of lift up manufacturing, and I wanted to talk a bit about that. And because you have your own podcast that's a lot
Mm.
cooler and flashier than this one, but I'm wondering why you started it and like what you saw and kind of what that experience has been so far as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this. So a little over a year ago, I love manufacturing, right? And I've been speaking at events locally, and I was telling my husband, I'm like, I kind of miss being on camera, but there's like, who am I going to interview now? And so I thought about it. I'm like, what if I just start interviewing manufacturing leaders so
Mm.
that, I could kind of like be on camera and then also expose and show the fun, cool, and sexy side of manufacturing. Hence why the name of my podcast is Making Things Fun, Cool, and Sexy, to show the next generation and more women that making things, it's very awesome and it's fulfilling.
Yeah.
I shared with you earlier that one of the reasons why I left Hollywood was because it wasn't as fulfilling anymore. Manufacturing is the most fulfilling industry that I have like ever been in. It is, being able to know that you helped make parts or components that go into a system that is curing cancer, for instance, right? Like that makes us sleep so well at night, and knowing, and our employees too, that was something else that I helped shift. And maybe it is being a woman, and it's like really going to the emotions and feelings of things. So when I first started working there, I noticed the employees would just work as if they were just widgets, right? Like, it's just like, okay, we're just manufacturing, it's no big deal. And then once I started educating them that, hey, these parts actually go into a system to help find a cure, then they actually care more, right? And
Right.
I think that when we do this for people in manufacturing and they really know um, where their work is ending up, I think it's so much more fulfilling and impactful. And that's
Yeah.
why I also go to schools. I speak to students to inspire them to get into manufacturing, because number one, we need the workforce, right? If we really want to bring manufacturing back to America, we
Absolutely.
need more people who are in manufacturing. And secondly, I think that, over time, trades were looked down upon. A lot of schools here, they shut down their trades. That's our job to go and show these students what manufacturing is all about. And I know that you do a lot in DC, and I really appreciate all of the work that you do. And we definitely need the government to come in and help us with manufacturing. But also we, the people, need to do our part, right? We can't just
Totally
rely
agree.
solely on the government to come in and help. So it's people like me and other manufacturers. When we have the time, let's give back and go to schools, show them what we do, because that's how they're going to get excited and how we'll win back the industry.
Right. Put some skin in the game because
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard the same thing too, because I hear it's like, I can't find any skilled workers. I can't do this. I can't do that. And a lot of complaining. It's like, let's have some doing as well. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're engaged in, both at the company level and then as kind of like an ambassador
Uh-huh.
to get out there and make those connections. I'm wondering at the schools, like, are the kids like, "No, I wanna do software," or, "I can't imagine myself doing that." Are they, has it been a receptive audience for you when you've presented kind of what the opportunities and the benefits are?
Oh, absolutely. When I start showing them the cool projects that we get to work on, their eyes just light up, right?
Hmm.
And they just get so excited to see, like, oh, wow, like SpaceX, like rockets, like I didn't know that things were made. Or I would bring in parts for them to show them the difference between a 3D printed part versus a machine component, right? And I teach them these different ways of manufacturing because you never know
Mhm.
what's going to excite them. I want to also share that we just recently hired a woman who is on our deburring team now. And initially we're like, oh, do you want to be in the QC room? Because
Mhm.
we tend to assume that maybe a woman doesn't want to, get dirty and use her hands. And she's like, Christine, I'm very good with my hands and I prefer to use my hands. Can I please go out to debur? I'm like,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I asked her, like, after you master deburring, would you want to go into QC or would you prefer to run machines? She's like, I think I want to run the machines. So,
Right.
it's really amazing to see like another woman working for us who is, breaking barriers, right? And really changing what people think. Like, it's not just women doing front office or back end work anymore. These women, they want to use their hands. They want to run machinery, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so uplifting to hear. You know this because if you're around at manufacturing crowds, is that there are some stereotypes, but there are also some things that are truths. Is that it was very male dominated for a long period of time, but it's increasingly, I think, a viable pathway for women, for people from a lot of different communities to kind of get a ladder up into the middle class and to achieve the American dream. Um, and do you find I'm curious about this because the name of your podcast, I think, is intentionally provocative and kind of your approach to this. And you're right, it is sexy, fun, and cool.
Yes.
But I'm wondering if if you ask people going in, like, what their impressions of manufacturing are, particularly those who haven't been around it, because I know that that's not often the image that people have.
Most people think it's dark, dirty, and dangerous, right? They're like, "What
Yeah.
are you doing in a factory?" I was just at a restaurant. Someone asked me what I did. A woman asked me, she's like, "Christine, what do you do?" I was like, "I run a machine shop." She's like, "That's not a job for a woman. A woman's not supposed to work in a machine shop." And I explained to her, I'm like, you run a restaurant, right? I don't see you working in the back, right? You hire a team that will cook for you and all of that. Well, same with me. I have a wonderful team that knows how to run the machinery. And so it does not mean like just because mostly men are in machining and manufacturing, it doesn't mean a woman can't come in and work in the same industry.
Yeah.
So,
So that's
yeah.
so true. I know we have a lot of listeners in the Midwest and other parts of the country that when you mention California to them, they're like, "Oh, those people." Which is unfortunate because that's not the way it is. But your family and many others, by the way, have found a way to obviously profitably
Mhm.
make things in many parts of California and find people to work and find markets and do all of that. So I'm just I'm sure there's some things that you would like to see improve, but it also sounds like it's not a bad place at all to try to do some types of manufacturing.
Not at all. Yes. there could be improvements such as, less regulations and all of that in California. Everyone gets it. And it is very difficult to run a business in California. However, it is also the talent is here. There's actually a lot of people who live here who want to learn and they're willing to learn. And in Santa Clara, where we're at, if you walk down
Yeah.
the street, there's machine shops on every corner.
Yeah.
So when people are surprised that California doesn't do or they assume that we don't do manufacturing, that is not the world I live in. The world I live in is a machine shop here, like literally on our cul-de-sac. We're a machine shop. Right next to us is a sheet metal shop. Right next to us is a plating shop. Across the
Mhm.
street from us is a tooling shop, right? So literally that's the reality that we live in. Is there's a lot of manufacturing around us. There's a lot of contract manufacturers around us. Applied materials, Lam
Mhm.
Research, semiconductors. I mean, they're all around the Bay Area. We
Right.
are a thriving manufacturing community. There's a lot of dreamers out here. There's a lot of immigrants who are looking to build an American dream, and my parents are one of them. They're immigrants from Vietnam. They came over here with basically nothing, and they built up this business. So there's the America is the land of opportunity, right? If we look at it, there's opportunity all around us.
Yeah. You're right. And I remember talking to an economist from California who one time told me, you know what, if the Los Angeles lost the entertainment industry, it would obviously be a devastating cultural blow to the city's identity because there are people who work in the entertainment industry, but it would be even worse if it lost all the manufacturing that's in LA County because so many of the defense contractors
Well,
and then garments and everything else is that I think it's actually the largest manufacturing cluster in
yeah.
America, but it's all behind the scenes. It's not out, as you project on the red carpet.
Exactly, exactly. And if you think about Tesla is right down the street from us as well, right? A lot of jobs that they're providing there. If you go down to LA, that's where a lot of more aerospace is, like
Mhm.
SpaceX, Relativity Space. A lot of space companies are down in the LA area. So yes, throughout the state, you're gonna find a lot of manufacturing. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's just the sexiness of Hollywood, right? But there's actually a lot more to it. Meta, right? These
Yeah.
Apple is in the Bay Area. All these companies, they rely on small and medium manufacturers to prototype for them, right?
Mhm.
So manufacturing is again thriving and booming up in the Bay Area. I could speak to that.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I wonder, both from your perspective as someone who's in a business, and then also someone who talks to a lot of other folks about manufacturing. Two things. I'll start with this. What is your advice to either a young person or someone kind of mid-career saying, "You know what? I don't like what I'm doing, but, I might like to work, in a factory." How do Because I think this is part of the rub for folks, like, how do they find these opportunities? Like, how do they find Silicon Valley elite manufacturing or any of the first and what kind of skills do they need or what kind of mindset do they need, Christine, to be successful?
That's a very great question. Obviously there's LinkedIn, right? But like for us,
Yeah.
we are a smaller family-owned manufacturing company that we don't always post our jobs online. How
Mhm.
we get our employees is actually through word of mouth and
Oh,
referrals,
yeah.
right? And honestly, all we ask is the willingness to learn. There are I would say more than 50% of our staff have no experience in manufacturing. They came with a willingness to learn, and we trained them
Mm.
from burring up to running a machine, and they just slowly work their way up.
The other question I wanted to ask you is as part of your work now is, are you optimistic about the future for not only your company, but for you said that you had just been a part of a reshoring
Mm.
presentation. Is this something that we can be optimistic about as we look ahead, because there have been some dark times for manufacturing, right? In the past, and there have been waves of challenges, but
Mm.
how do you feel right now, Christine, about things?
I'm very optimistic. I am very, very optimistic. And I know with these changes in office right now, it is disruptive, right? It's going to change things up, and things might get worse before it gets better. But, you know, everyone around me has said that they've been quoting a lot more. They've seen a lot more, at least potential orders coming in. For us, we just expanded into a facility 3 times the size that we were in, just a month and a half ago, right? We are actually
Yeah.
preparing for the reshoring that's going to be coming back. So, yes, I am pretty optimistic about, manufacturing coming back, thriving. Another thing that I would like to add is, it took almost 50 years for us to lose our manufacturing powers. Obviously, we can't win it back in a year, right? We're not gonna even
No.
win it back in 4 years. It's
Right.
going to be a lot longer than just this presidential term that we can actually
Mhm.
see a positive impact. However, I think, like, I'll speak on, like, Silicon Valley at least, right? Or even America, like, what we're good at and here in Silicon Valley is the tech, right? We have software that's really good, AI. Um, what we're lacking right now in America is automation and robotics, and I think, like, we really need to that misconception that robots are gonna take over jobs. No, robots cannot do anything unless a human programs it and tells it what to do, right? It needs power. It needs all of this that a human needs to like empower it to do things. So, for instance, let's instead of having one human running one CNC operating that loading machine. First of all, that's very boring. The next generation is not going to want to do that.
Mhm.
That's very tedious, and it's not even good for the body that someone is consistently just carrying parts, loading this up and down, up and down. Imagine if we train up the next generation or even our staff, instead of the one person operating the machine, we are going to we're going to program 5 robots, and this one human can now program 5 different robots so that it increases our efficiency. We are
Yeah,
still, you see what I'm talking about? Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
so we don't need to be afraid of robots. We don't need to be afraid of AI. All of this is going to empower the human to be more efficient so that we can win manufacturing back. If we are consistently afraid to take this next step to add robotics and automation onto our shop floor, we will never ever win it back. If we actually see what they're doing in Asia, we are way far behind. I just spoke recently at another conference and I broke the truth. I'm like, guys, look, China's better than us. China can manufacture a lot faster, a lot cheaper, and the quality is actually better than us now because we have lost it. But
Mhm.
we can win that back, right? And it's
Yep.
number 1, accepting the truth, realizing where we're at. Okay, yes, we're not leading right now in manufacturing. But once we
Yeah.
have the desire and fire to wanna win it back, okay, let's start. Let's build out that infrastructure that we need. We need to rebuild our manufacturing infrastructure. We need to add technology. We need to add AI. We need to add all of this so that number 1, the next generation gets excited about manufacturing. Because again, I don't foresee the next generation just wanting to load up
Mhm.
material on a CNC, but once they see robots, that's what excites them. They're like, "Oh, this is very cool." So again, I think manufacturing is going to come back in a very different way. It's not going to be the same thing that we've been seeing. I think it's going to come back. It's going to be a lot more advanced. It's going to be very, very smart. It's not going to be how we saw it. And I think that this is the
Right.
next step to the next industrial revolution for America. This is the chance. Like if we want to win it back, let's do it now.
Yeah. I first of all, I just wanna say I feel like we've been listening on each other's conversations for a long time, because I say exactly the same thing about how long it's gonna take to turn this around. Like, it didn't happen overnight, not gonna be fixed overnight. And that robots are not gonna eat all the jobs, right? That they're gonna probably increase opportunities if we do this the right way, right? Because 'Cause we'll develop new products, we'll be more efficient. Someone's gotta make the robots, maintain them, program as you said, that there's a world of possibilities here.
Totally. It
Yeah.
is. it's going to be fabulous. I really do see it. We just need to all look at the long road ahead, right? It's not
Right.
gonna be overnight, and it's gonna take some time.
Yeah. So I want to ask you kind of one big question as we wrap up, and it's going to ask you to put that microphone back up and be on the red carpet again a little bit. Um, I've often thought, y- I don't know this to be the case, but I've often thought that the presentation of manufacturing that people see from culture is not helpful, right? Because either, if you think about it, action movies, horror movies, there's always like an abandoned factory involved, and it's dark, and there's stuff dripping down, and there's chains, and there's horror, and there's no people around. There's just like a monster, right? And then you also think about, I guess, some of the cultural expressions of like even sitcoms or regular Hollywood or movies, and how many like manufacturing heroes
I know.
are there,
No,
right? And I wonder if you've thought about that at all. And I don't even know if there's a market for it. I mean, there's been some working class presentations that I can think of, but they're many years old. But I don't know. Do you think that we can get a sitcom or a movie green lighted that has a great manufacturing story to it?
I love that you asked this. Actually, a producer from Hollywood, he recently reached out to me because we knew each other when I was still a reporter, and he asked like what I was up to, and I told him I'm in manufacturing. I pivoted my career. He's like, "Wow, like you're actually like doing things good for the society, Christine. I'm so happy." And I planted the seed. I'm like, "Hey, I think we need a movie about manufacturing." And so he's asked me, he's like, "Christine, what would the movie be about? Why don't you tell me, and then we could think about this through, and maybe it could happen." So you never know, Scott, you never know, but a movie should be made. Like, from the moment you quote a job, right? There's, like, so much anxiety over that, like, what do you do to try to win this bid? And to the even finishing it on time, right? And maybe even a sitcom. I think that that's a great idea because then you could show different types of, like, projects and how it works. I think we should do it, Scott.
Right. I mean, there have been all sorts of shows like How I Made This, or inside sneak peeking inside a factory. But I was just thinking like the kind of the working class portrayals that we've seen
Yeah.
lately. I mean, none of that has been really inside a factory. Well, I promise I would love to be a collaborator with you on that, if we can, if we want to move that forward. So
Yes, let's do it.
fantastic. And Christine, where can our listeners find out more about the work that you're doing?
You could go on my website. It's easy, christineholly.com. And then it'll take you to my podcast, and you could email me there as well. So christineholly.com.
And your podcast is great. I know that I caught a recent episode about like autonomous tractors in farming in the San Joaquin Valley, and I was like, yeah, my mind was blown by some of the stuff that's happening. It's really fascinating.
Yes, it's designed and made here in Silicon Valley. It's really awesome.
Fantastic. Well, Christine No, thank you so much for joining us on the Manufacturing Report today.
Thanks for having me.